All right, we're following other top stories as well. You heard of breaking news earlier on that Tom Moyane was granted leave to cross-examine Pravin Gordhan. We have more on the story now.
Absolutely. We're joined on the line by the legal counsel for Mr. Moyane, Mr. Eric Mabuza. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. What is Mr. Moyane's reaction to this outcome?
Good morning, Desmond. Thank you for inviting me to your show. Mr. Moyane welcomes the ruling. He believes that in the end, justice was served after a very, very long road. As you know, the matter has been before the commission since last year, and he applied initially and was unsuccessful, and now his application to cross-examine Mr. Gordhan was approved by the chair of the commission.
Yes.
We are looking forward to Mr. Gordhan coming to face the music to defend the allegations that is made against Mr. Moyane. You've read the Deputy Chief Justice saying any allegation of being part of state capture is very, very serious, and we agree with that sentiment by the Deputy Chief Justice. So all we're looking forward to is for Mr. Gordhan to come and justify each and every statement that is made against Mr. Moyane. But all this, Desiree, shows one important thing, that you can run away, but in the end, the long arm of the law catches up with everyone.
Mr. Mabuza, how do the conditionalities limit or restrict Mr. Moyane in terms of what he can ask Mr. Gordhan?
No. The conditions don't limit him in any way whatsoever. It's just the topics that have been demarcated on which Deputy Chief Justice wants to hear evidence on. Each and every issue that has been identified by Justice Zondo, it's a weighty issue on itself. So the whole point of demarcating it is so that there is clarity. If you remember, there are about 5 topics on which the judge wants to cross-examination to be focused on. Each of those topics, it's a weight on its own. For instance, one of the questions is whether in laying the criminal complaint or charges against Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Moyane acted maliciously.
Yes.
It's a very, very weighty topic. Whether in laying the criminal charges against Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Moyane was motivated wholly or in part or sought to advance objectives of state capture. That topic on its own is very, very wide. So we're not really concerned about the
limitations.
Yeah.
No, not at all. What we are looking forward to now, we're looking forward to consult with Mr. Moyane over the weekend to start preparing the affidavit which the Deputy Chief Justice asked us to do.
Yes, so, Mr. Mabuza, this affidavit that you are meant to submit by the 15th of January 2020, just take us through what is supposed to be in this affidavit. It's basically responding, I understand, to Mr. Gordhan's.
That's quite correct. To respond to the allegations that is made, and also to set our own version, our side of the story on those topics, so that it becomes easier for the judge when the cross-examination takes effect, for the judge to know what we are saying in our version.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically to curtail the proceeding so that it doesn't become an open-ended discussion. But we're not concerned about that because a lot of work has been done on that. And in fact, what Mr. Moyane wants is that we must start working on that affidavit and submit it as soon as possible. We don't have to wait for January. What we are looking forward to, and we hope the Commission to do, is to arrange dates as quickly as possible so that the matter can be ventilated. As you know, I mean, the matter has been on our radar for a long time. So justice delayed really is justice denied. We don't want that. I mean, it's also unfair on Mr. Gordhan himself because it's over a year since he testified. So you can imagine he has to go back and revisit this issue. Right. Similarly, it's unfair on our client, Mr. Moyane, that he had to wait for almost a year with these allegations hanging, and he had no platform to go in and refute them. But finally, we are very happy that we'll have that opportunity for Mr. Gordhan to justify each and every statement that he's made against Mr. Moyane. You know, it's quite easy for a person to make allegations on paper in an affidavit and you sign an affidavit. That's another matter altogether, when you have to face cross-examination by an experienced senior counsel who will go through each and every statement that you've made in your affidavit to justify it and to ask for evidence of whatever you're saying. So we're really looking forward to that.
Mr. Mabuza, stay on the line for us. We just want to recap for our viewers what the Commission Chair said earlier on with regards to this ruling.
Yeah.
Mr. Moyane is hereby granted leave to cross-examine Mr. Gordhan on A, whether in laying the criminal complaint or charges against Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Moyane acted maliciously. B, whether in laying the criminal complaint against Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Moyane was motivated wholly or in part by, or he sought to advance the objectives of state capture. C, whether in laying the criminal complaint against Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Moyane was abusing a legal process for his own personal goals that had nothing or little to do with a legitimate complaint relating to an alleged crime. D, whether as Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Moyane sought to advance the state capture project. E, whether Mr. Moyane's personal goals while he was SARS Commissioner included the advancement of the state capture project. 2, Mr. Moyane is directed to deliver to the acting secretary or secretary of the commission on or before 15 January 2020 an affidavit or a firm declaration in which he responds to the clarificatory affidavit delivered by Mr. Gordhan. 3, Mr. Moyane's affidavit or firm declaration must make it clear which amendments or allegations or statements in Mr. Gordhan's affidavit he admits or denies, what the basis are for denying or disputing those he denies or disputes, and give Mr. Moyane's full version in regard to the allegations or comments.
So, Mr. Mabuza, you heard the parameters given by the chairperson in which this cross-examination can take place. I just want to get some clarity with regards to the timeline of this. We know that this is the second application of its kind. The first one was dismissed by the Deputy Chief Justice in April. What was different this time round?
You know, when you talk about the time to be allocated, you will have noticed that the Deputy Chief Justice has not allocated time because all the topics that have been raised in the ruling are very, very weighty topics. For instance, if you look at number 4, whether as Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Moyane sought to advance the state capture project. That is a huge topic because it has to cover also his time at SARS. And that's why the Chief Justice, in our view, correctly so, could not allocate time now because of that appreciation that it is almost difficult, if not impossible, to set the time for such an important matter, so to speak.
No, granted, Mr. Mabuza, but I was just asking you with regards to the timeline, not pertaining to the upcoming cross-examination, with regards to the application, the dismissal of the application initially back in April. I just want to understand what was different this time around in the Deputy Chief Justice granting the application.
No, but if you remember the first ruling that he made,
yeah.
This topic that is ruled on was reserved then, it was not dismissed. It's not as if we made a new application. What the Deputy Chief Justice said then was that of all the topics, this topic he wanted the parties to give him more information, the same way that he's asked us not to file another affidavit. So once the parties filed whatever clarification affidavit that he sought, the Chief Justice said, on the basis of the further affidavit that was filed by Gordhan. In fact, we never even filed an affidavit ourselves. On the basis of the clarification that Mr. Gordhan filed, he is of the view that indeed Mr. Moyane is entitled to cross-examination. So it's not as if this is a new application altogether. It's been part of the first application, but the Chief the Deputy Chief Justice simply wanted further clarification, particularly from Mr. Gordhan, because he said Mr. Gordhan needed to clarify what he meant by the use of the ways that Mr. Moyane was motivated by malice or state capture. In fact, the 5 topics that we've just discussed, so they emanate from the first affidavit. That's what concerned the Deputy Chief Justice. Even then,
Mr. Mabuza, we're talking about the 5 topics that the Deputy Chief Justice says the questioning must relate to the allegations made against Mr. Gordhan. But it's just interesting to see that about 3 of the topics relate to the possible advancement of state capture. How are you going to separate these? Like number 2 says, was motivated by advancing state capture. Number 4 says, sought to advance state capture. Number 5, his personal goals were to advance state capture. How do we separate these?
But remember, these allegations emanate from Mr. Gordhan. So what is going to happen, we're going to take Mr. Gordhan to his affidavit and deal with each topic
separately,
topic by topic. Of course, there's going to be overlap, and also confront him or ask him to produce evidence or confront him with objective facts. You remember one of the issues that was discussed in the ruling is whether a reasonable commissioner, given the information that he had before him, ought to have laid criminal charges. So we'll have to deal with those topics to say why Mr. Gordhan thinks Mr. Moyane should not have laid charges. But it's a it's just a big minefield, so to speak.
Okay.
Because ultimately, if you look at the affidavit of Mr. Gordhan as well as his testimony, what he said in essence is that Mr. Moyane was part of the state capture project.
Yep.
So the judge says now, let's deal with this. Wants information, wants to give Mr. Moyane an opportunity to test these allegations, to find out if Mr. Gordhan has any information or documents to prove what he said. But the important fact from today's ruling, which is very, very big, is that everyone who goes to the commission henceforth will have to be careful not to make spurious allegations against people without necessary evidence. Not the evidence to back up the allegations. You can quite understand that it is almost like a death sentence to be called part of the state capture project. So people should not willy-nilly make those allegations without the evidence to back up the allegations. And Mr. Gordhan, all along, has been running away from accounting. From day one, Mr. Moyane says he was willing to testify, but he wanted an opportunity to cross-examine, to question Mr. Gordhan. On what basis is he saying that Mr. Moyane was part of the state capture project? Finally, in the end, justice taken long, but justice in the end prevailed because Mr. Moyane will have his say, opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Gordhan. I mean, we always believe that it was unfair to deny him the opportunity to cross-examine to him. And on that score, we still hold instructions to review the first ruling, which we, in our view, was incorrect.
Mr. Mabuza, just finally, I think we can safely assume, judging by how long this process has been unfolding, that there will be some sort of fight back from Mr. Pravin Gordhan. What will your client consider as a successful outcome of this process when all is said and done?
As we speak now, it's been successful because he has an opportunity to test the allegations. So for us, this is a major, major victory, not only for Mr. Moyane, but for the entire country, so that there's transparency, there's accountability from both ends. Remember, Mr. Moyane must account for the allegations. Similarly, Mr. Gordhan must account for the allegations. We've never sought to protect Mr. Moyane from accounting. From day one, we said Mr. Moyane is ready to account. But it was Mr. Gordhan who was refusing to account.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.